We wanted to take time to let people talk about what they may have learned today, what hasn't been answered. We are also, because we're not fools, we're primed the pump. We've asked a couple of people not to take 10 minutes, but to take a couple of minutes and make some observations because we think they have something to add, and then we're just going to open it up. The first one, where are the mic folks? Who's got the mics? Ed Skloot was rudely, by me, stopped just at the most, like a Saturday morning cereal in my youth. Just as he was getting to the good part, we stopped. So Ed, stand up. There were a couple of observations you wanted to make in a couple of minutes.
Yeah. Hello. Good. First, I'd like to say thanks to the folks putting on the program today. This was a super graduate level seminar, and I think we've all learned a great deal. And had a lot of fun too. I wanted to make 4 points in addition to what was said, most of which were really remarkable outlines of whole subjects to study. The first, as I started to say, was historically, philanthropy is only 100 years old, and historically it's been an underachiever. In many, many ways, it's work in advocacy, collaboration, as we talked about, cross-sector partnerships, and it goes on and on. It has not done particularly well. It is a challenge for us. So each of these 4 points are really challenges that we are teeing up by this conversation. The second one is when the discussion came up about B corporations and L3Cs. I know that's gobbledygook to a number of folks here. But these are hybrid groups that are trying to be set up and are being set up to fracture the polarity between nonprofits and for-profits, and therefore access more capital, and therefore bring more nonprofits to the third point, which is scale. Virtually all of the nonprofits who were here today talked about the problems of growth, and they are constant and getting worse. And so there is more need to find growth capital so that these groups can purvey their services much more. And finally, the issue of impact investing and so on is, mission-based investing is just beginning to come over the horizon. In fact, each of these that I talked about is. And as we go forward, if one keeps one's eye on these 4 characteristics of what philanthropy is about, you will see the next 5 years unfold, tied to technology and tied to social investing. Thank you.
The next person we have asked, this is like the president, who calls on, the press conference, but he has the list. So, but everybody's on this list once we get past the first 3, so it's not quite that. Lisa Witters, the Chief Strategy Officer of Fenton Communications. David Fenton is a man that I met decades ago, and it is a measure of how old I am that Lisa has promised to go back and find out exactly when and where I met him.
The 80s.
But we spent time together back in another lifetime. Lisa, you've got a couple of points you'd like to make. Please do.
Great, thank you. So I want to seriously talk about, in this very serious room, fun. Because I think fun is really important to innovation in philanthropy. So I want to ask you a question first. How many people, if you see stairs and you see an escalator, how many people would honestly take the stairs over the escalator? Okay. So what I want to do is quickly roll a video, Steve, of some fun. How many people have seen this? A couple. Okay. serious issues for a long time: rape, female genital mutilation, poverty, genocide, war. These are really serious things. And I started feeling burned out. And I have 2 little kids at home who are 2 and 4, and I was noticing when I was feeling happy is when we were playing and when we were having fun. And I started also talking to a lot of my Gen Y and young Gen X friends, and they were starting to get do-gooder fatigue. They had liked a lot of things on Facebook. They had tweeted a number of things. They'd given $5 or $3. But I started getting worried that if we didn't figure out how to make all of this more fun, that we were going to lose people in philanthropy and in do-gooding. So I started looking into the science of fun, and I found out actually that laughter and fun builds resilience, it reduces fear, and it actually builds community. And then I started looking at technology and the role that technology plays in fun and changing ourselves and our lives. You know, Wii has a game that fights obesity. Social gaming is on the rise. If you look at Zynga, a lot of money is being raised for causes. So what I wanted to do is just really implore you to think about, as we sit in these serious rooms and have serious conversations about ROIs and MAs and impact investing, that we also ourselves take time to have fun and think about fun solutions to serious problems. So thanks.
Thank you. And Mark Pollack. Mark is the president and founder of the Giving Back Fund, which says it stands for integrity and innovation in philanthropy, as opposed, I guess, to old thinking and corruptness in philanthropy. Mark is from Los Angeles. The geographic spread here is really terrific. We went from Durham, North Carolina to New York to Los Angeles. So at least geographically, diversity has been a part of this. Mark, you've got the floor for a few minutes, please.
One of the things that my staff keeps telling me is that our tagline doesn't say anything about what we do. And they said that they claim that that's a bad thing. So what the Giving Back Fund does is we create and manage charitable foundations for athletes and entertainers and business entrepreneurs around the world. But what I want to talk to you about today is something different. And it's an idea I'd like to share with you. And I want to give a blanket apology before I start if I cough, because I'm recovering from a little cough, and I didn't want to miss this special day. So if I should cough, one apology for any coughs. Broadly defined, philanthropy is inextricably interwoven into the DNA of our country. It's one of our most cherished values. It's how we define ourselves as a nation. When we think about Christmas time in America, one of the most enduring symbols that at least I think about is those bells that are rung outside of department stores everywhere by the Salvation Army. When we think about fortunes that have been made in America, all the way back from Rockefeller to Carnegie to Ford, Mellon, Kellogg, Gates, Buffett, and Kaplan. When we think about all the fortunes that have been made in America, they have all been plowed back into philanthropy. Even when we bomb a country, as we did in World War II, we go back in and we rebuild it. That's what Americans do. We had the Marshall Plan. We are a nation of givers. So over the past year, I've been drawing together a group of people to create, hopefully here in Washington, a United States Museum of Philanthropy that would tell the story in ways that inform and educate. To anybody who comes to Washington, all of our kids come here and do their Museum Washington tours. They go from Air and Space to the art galleries to the Holocaust Museum. I think there is a story to be told that is endemic in who we are as a nation about philanthropy. It would be a 21st century museum. We'll have to get, is Jacqueline still here, our friends from Google, to help make it interactive. All of the elements would be in there so that, imagine for a moment, a 12-year-old kid from some inner city coming to Washington. As they enter this museum, they would be handed a credit card. On that credit card would be $1 million to spend. And as they go through the museum, and they have an opportunity to spend it in any way they like, to build wells in Africa, to fund microfinance in India, homelessness in America. And each time they make a donation, they put their credit card in a machine that would give them an outcome that would tell them how many lives they're benefiting. And at the end of that museum, they would see that the million that they had to spend benefited thousands and thousands of people. Imagine how empowering that could be for a child. There needs to be a central place in America for standards, for best practices. Such a museum could be that. And I just wanted to share that idea. It's something that we've been working on, and I invite any of you to contribute your ideas to it.
Thank you, Mark. If you can give that back. So, I know it's been a long day. I hope you think it has been a productive day, but we have budgeted this time for any of you who want to raise a point, ask a question, make you see. By the way, thank you everyone for adhering to that notion of making your points concisely. I just think it added so much to the fact that we got more information. But it's your turn now, if you so choose. Want to make a point? Want to ask a question? Where are our mic people? Here you go. Raise your hand up high so our mic people can see you. Because I'm not Phil Donahue. I cannot run into the audience. Go ahead.
Again, my name is Jonah. I had an idea today after watching Eric Cantor speak. What is it that the federal government can do to provide incentives for philanthropy besides, tax legislation? The Presidential Medal of Honor. A lot of people are inspired by such a medal. What about a philanthropy honor? What about a White House honor or a congressional honor for philanthropists? Greatest bang for buck at different gift levels. It'd be a fantastic idea. I'm working on an idea called a Global Campaign for a Culture of Philanthropy, which is trying to push ideas like that in every country in the world.
Am I correct or not that Slate.com every year honors the most impressive or generous philanthropists? And I must say, I think various presidents have linked things like invitations to White House dinners to philanthropy. I've always thought that was a very smart thing to do. And it kind of, Deanna, it kind of fits the notion of leverage. You want to meet the president, you want to hobnob with people, pony up. To face that fact. I think you're on to something, and I think people are trying to. I think it's a Presidential Medal of Freedom you're talking about, but that's exactly the idea. But it's the kind of thing that, if anybody else got ideas bubbling, it's not compulsory, but it helps.
Hi, my name's Courtney. I write for a site called Dowser, which covers social innovation. And I wanted to just throw in one sector which hasn't been discussed much, which is journalism and media. I think there's a lot of sort of emphasis in the news on what's going wrong, right? Which we need. We need investigative journalism, and we need those stories about things like Occupy Wall Street, et cetera. But I find that it's very hard to pitch stories about what's actually working without being seen as writing a fluff story. There's not a lot of room for substantive reporting on solutions that are really working. And David Bornstein, who's my mentor, writes the Fixes column in the New York Times, and we're sort of trying to have this conversation about how do we create more journalistic spaces to write substantive work on substantive journalism on what's working, and not just sort of do these individual heroic stories, but really look at solutions that can be scaled, and we can all learn from each other by seeing kind of the intricacy of why it's working. So I just wanted to throw out that piece of the puzzle in terms of all these different sectors.
What's interesting about that is that one of the networks is that, and I should know this, I used to work there, at one of them, all of them, almost, is that every night NBC does Making a Difference, which are upbeat stories. CBS has Steve Hartman, who's about to step into Charles Kuralt's old On the Road role. His pieces are nothing except about finding kind of inspirational stories about people, 10-year-old kids who've raised $1 million to fight something. So I would gently dispute the notion that people aren't looking for good news. In fact, the news organizations are, in effect, hungry because they know what most of the news is like to present such stories. Now, I can't bridge the gap between, you got to hire Fenton Communications, I guess. That's part of what they do. But I do think there is an appetite precisely for that kind of stuff, if you know where to go. Over here, sir. But wait for a mic. I'm sorry, did you I beg your pardon. Did you want to ask a question first? I'm sorry, I'm just dense. Go ahead, then we'll go to you.
I'm jumping in. First of all, it's been such a great privilege to be here today, and I just can't move on without saying that and thanking everybody for their participation today. There is one thing that occurred to me throughout today that I want to throw out for all of you who do have access to all these, to the innovation, to the technology, and to the youth that we're talking about. And that is that I realized today one of the things that I'm most lucky to have experienced in life is to have lived before the technology boom and after the technology boom. And I'm speaking now not because of the role that I have with athletes and their philanthropy, but I teach as well at a wonderful institution here in Washington. And what I'm finding with this incredibly energized, powerful next generation is that in growing up with technology, they've been deprived of the opportunity to learn how to analyze and to understand the difference between assumption and facts. And so I teach social responsibility and diversity, so it relates to the subjects that we're talking about today. But I'm just wondering, is there a way we can use this information overload to actually help decision making, not to sort of take it away from this next generation? And I think really it's going to mean different kind of teaching. And so if the groups that we're speaking today on technology could help, forget all the other education issues that we could bring up. This is just a particular thing about how people are learning today and the importance of what we have if we were born before the technology and after the technology that we're not giving to this next generation, this ability to analyze and understand. So I would just throw that out as a challenge for all of us.
Okay. Now, who did I cut off because I didn't see you at the mic?
Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Kauffman. I'm the co-founder of the 1% Foundation. So I'd like to second that thought. It's been wonderful to be here. So thank you so much for all of the organizers. I have two thoughts. The first is that, Deanna, I really appreciated what you had to say. And I think your work is so important. And there's a handful of people who are really focused on engaging youth in philanthropy. Unfortunately, these programs almost entirely drop off after college. And I think we have to realize that people who, the first time they're really dealing with money is after college, right, when they're earning an income. And I think we need to figure out how to actually train these people how to interact with their money in a philanthropic way, how to use these platforms that are being created to promote innovation. The second thought is, somebody said this morning that this is really about leadership. And philanthropy ties very closely to leadership. And I really wish there'd be a little bit more thinking about how we can use philanthropic engagement, especially among people in their 20s and early 30s, to promote broader civic engagement in the voting and the volunteering and activism realms. So I would love to speak with anyone who has thoughts about that afterwards.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Karen Warrench, and I work on behalf of a university in Israel, Ben Gurion University. And I really wanted to just start by thanking David and Leonard and the Alliance for Global Good, because I know, at least for me, it's really been inspiring. I work in my own little niche world, and this has really opened up just the conversation for philanthropy and what we do on a larger level. So in that vein, I just wanted to ask the Alliance, what's next? And this is the inaugural bipartisan conference, but is there another one? What can we look forward to in the future?
And I think David will be talking about that at the very end of his closing remarks. Yes, let's, again, okay, you first, yeah. So I guess you'll take the mic, and then he'll take the mic.
Okay, great. Hi.
And then we'll walk right over here.
Ben Powell from Agora Partnerships, and again, thank you very much for this very illuminating afternoon. My comment is about the impact investing industry, and I think one of the roles that philanthropists can play right now that's really, really exciting and where there's enormous leverage is helping to develop the impact entrepreneurship industry. And we've talked a lot about the power of business to create social change and key trends around social media and eliminating information asymmetries, finding data. And I think all of that is kind of leading to a conclusion that in the future, more and more people are going to want to get involved with supporting small businesses that can create jobs and solve social problems. And that for the impact investing industry to really reach its promise, we're going to have to figure out how to get to those startup companies. Companies like Sweet Beginnings, where I was really overwhelmed by your presentation, and we need to find ways to support people like you so you don't have to do it all by yourself. So thank you.
My name is Michael Granger. I advise emerging companies on how to grow their businesses. And I've never really been to a function like this, not for profit, because I've spent the better part of the last 25 years working on helping companies access capital, helping minorities and women-owned businesses, people who are outside of the mainstream of the main flow of capital get access. And I came to the realization that what people here are talking about is really about people, helping people live a better quality of life. That's what it comes down to. And I have to say that I've been moved by, all the people here who have dedicated their lives to helping other people. And this really moved me because this is the first time I'm not in and of this industry. So it was a very gratifying experience.
Thank you for that. Sophie, you don't have to hit the gym tonight. You're getting a good workout.
Stephanie Whittier at Morgan Stanley, and I cover foundations and endowments. And I know Leonard for quite a while, and I know David for quite a while. And thank you. This was profound. And I'm anxious to hear what you say or follow-ups. Personally, I can think of 3 or 4 projects I'd like to work on. One of the takeaways is the abused children, working with maybe LinkedIn and Google and FBI, because I'm doing a Citizens Academy, or this lovely woman that I met just by accident,
just let me know if we
who is the Daughters of Charity for St. Vincent, and they do enormous good work, so how to bring them into the future, and Feeding America. So there's 5 or 6 projects. I think maybe if we keep a spreadsheet of projects we want to work on through this group, it might do some good. So.
Okay, we've got a customer. All right, we'll get there. Sophie?
My identity is David Brand's mother-in-law.
Well, if you like this, it's got to be good.
I want to tell you, I am blown away by all of you. It's been such a wonderful experience for me. And now I will be able to tell my friends what it is that David has been doing. I couldn't really define it before. But I do have a question, and I guess I'm introducing sort of a sour note, which I don't really want to do, but I'm wondering, because I know there's a lot of competition in the world of philanthropy, and there are people whose personal nests are feathered by whatever they're doing for their philanthropy, and some element of jealousy is out there. And I'm hoping that perhaps this approach might ultimately change that, and I'd like to know what you all think about that possibility.
Would anyone like a direct response? Because I think a number of us who are on the receiving end of gifts sometimes feel like there's this pitched battle. Oh, you think your disease is bad? Huh, where do you see what mine does? So I don't know, but I mean, if there's somebody who'd like to pick that theme up, fine, you can take a beat. We've got someone else. Jerry, you want to make a point? Not on this, it's whatever.
I could actually do both.
Oh, okay then.
The first thing, and you asked, I guess, the right question at the right time, one of the things that we're looking at the Alliance is how do you maximize each contribution? How do you try as best as possible to take what is perhaps endemic to any situation and redirect those assets towards the greater good? So yes, it's certainly something that has been a problem, not just in the philanthropic world, but everywhere. Greed is greed. But my question for the group, the stated purpose of our getting together today was to identify the conditions and underlying policies and practices that encourage, support, and sustain innovation in the solution of social and economic problems. And I think we've heard a lot of different approaches, different ideas, different ways that philanthropy is going to change, different ways that innovation is part of the fabric of philanthropy in the current moment. As Susan said, we're at the end of definitions. So my question is, given that that was our stated purpose, are there, blue sky it, what out there would make it even easier, better, environment for the growth of philanthropic innovation? Is there any 1, 2, 3, 4 things that we could point to and say, this would really help?
Okay. If it's all right with you, let me take a couple of minutes to make one point, because I've been asking questions, and it clicked in my mind when I asked a question about the role of the public sector, and it really goes right to the heart of innovation. I was very lucky when I got out of law school to find a job on Capitol Hill in the office of Robert Kennedy in the last year of his life. And what struck me, what's never left me about him as a thinker, was the degree to which, as he once said, when he looked at a problem, you had to grasp the web whole. The conventional way, for instance, if you looked at education and you were on the progressive side of things, you would say, we got to spend a lot more money. And he said, that, you know what, that's not going to do it. You can spend all the money you want, but if you don't change the structure of the school, you're just going to wind up with another generation of lost kids. One of the things and this is long before I got there, this had nothing to do with anything of me except as an admirer. He raised the question, why don't we let inner city high school kids leave school for a few hours a day to work? And his point was, one, most of these kids were in homes that never saw a father, where there were no jobs. They had never had the experience of understanding what a job was. So they'd have that. Second, you'd put money in their pocket. Third, because of the crisis of black male poverty, you would give these kids a sense that there was a way out. And he said, by the way, while they're working, they might discover that they had skills or interests in much bigger things than just, say, blue-collar work. You might put them to work rehabbing a house, and they might decide, carpentry is interesting. Architecture is interesting. Now, this book that I did, this sort of counterfactual history, What If? One of my chapters has Bobby surviving and becoming president and getting into a big fight with organized labor and the teachers' unions. Because in the conventional way of progressive thinking, that's child labor. Right? We don't want child labor. No, but you might want teenage people to get the experience of work. And over again, I saw how that kind of thinking broke through the conventional silos of conservative and liberal. In Bedford-Stuyvesant, while he was a senator, he launched a Bedford-Stuyvesant restoration program. Reminded me a little bit of what you were talking about in Chicago, because the idea was it was local control. He had 2 boards, a mostly white rich board that supplied the money and talent in the terms of resources, but a local board, or all black, that made the decisions. And one of his rules was nobody could participate unless you put some skin in the game. It was like $5, but everybody had to have a stake, because otherwise it was just somebody, it was a Lord Bountiful handing it out. And I only mention this point because I'm contradicting myself. There's nothing that says that innovation can't happen in the public sector. But it seems to me that what we've heard today are a number of examples where people looked at a situation and they grasped the web whole. They didn't just say, okay, let's increase the allotment, let's get more money. Let's change the structure of what we're doing. That's my point. Now, you wanted to...
Jeff, that's a perfect example of why we're here today. What you said and what Bobby Kennedy said is a perfect example. And they have that model, but it's not in the public school systems. It's the Cristo Rey system. That one day a week, the high school kids go off, and they're corporate sponsors. We're corporate sponsors of it. And there's no reason that can't be done in the public school. So it's a great example. It solves unemployment, it's skills, it's everything.
Right. The dilemma here is, as somebody said, whenever you try to reform something, there's somebody's interests you might be questioning. One of his other notions was a police corps, that in return for a college education, poor kids agreed to serve 2 years in a local police force. They wouldn't become permanent policemen or women. So you save the pension and health care costs, you increase the police presence at a minimal cost, you give people a college education, and you also end the separation between the community and the cops, because these are people in the community who now, instead of looking at the cops as hostile forces, are part of it. Now, the police unions were not crazy about this idea, to put it mildly. And that's a challenge, I think, public or private. Sir.
So this isn't necessarily a new idea, but I think it's a good idea. And that is, many of us have talked about the need for impact measures because we need to know what works before we decide what to try to scale or what to try to invest in. And recently, we built a little online platform just as a small idea, really copycatting change makers from Ashoka, taking a page out of their book. And we call it Solution Search, solutionsearch.org. And this humble idea was just basically to go around the world and say, what's working for, pick a theme. In our case, as a conservation organization, it was what's working in coastal communities to actually increase their fisheries production, because that's their protein of last resort. And they're also the poorest, most climate vulnerable people on Earth. And in 6 weeks, we got 103 different organizations from 5 continents to describe in great detail what they think is a solution. But I have 100 staff. I run a small nonprofit. The question that I really want to answer is, how will we take, starting tomorrow, I think, the top 10 solutions go up online. National Geographic will promote them, and we'll have the general public vote. I don't really care who wins the popular vote, but my team's right now looking at what are a few of those kernels of ideas that our judging panel believe and that we believe can be replicated. And we already have a plan in place to replicate in about 30 sites on a pilot basis one of those solutions. But it seems to me that with all the philanthropists that we work with, the dozens of foundations and government agencies and high net worth individuals, that question of first finding what works, but then actually working to replicate and then eventually scale is the problem. That's the question we're all trying to answer. So one thing, I don't really know much about this group. I was invited 2 days ago to this event, but one thing that this group seems to me to have the potential to do is a series of pilot initiatives like that, where if a group of philanthropists, we friends and family, put in money into a pool and said, let's pick a few pillars. And I would often offer up Solution Search to help, at least on the environmental pillar. Let's find, work on a chronic problem. Let's take the one overfishing or stoves that 3 billion people cook on that are causing lung disease and increasing deforestation rates in the third world and leading to climate change. Pick that as a theme. What are the best ways that people have found to solve that problem? And if everyone, as you said, has some money on the table in advance, we know that we can begin to think about exploring and scaling up what we now have all looked at as a potential bona fide solution.
Could I just make one notion? I don't know why I thought of this when you were talking. Yeah, we got a couple people. That's fine. We got time. You know the Kindle 99-cent singles? I've been asked to write one. I think 99 cents. It turns out that there are a few people who write these Kindle singles or these Kindle 99-cent things. The author prices them, who are millionaires. Because when it turns out, and I've experienced this as Kindle says, you want to buy this for 99 cents. 99 cents? I mean, come on. Sure. Well, they figured out how to scale this. So I can't even remember the guy's name, but I looked at the top-selling books, and there are 2 or 3 writers I never heard of who, by selling their stuff for 99 cents, and they get 70% of the take, have become literally millionaires. Now, if you can raise millions of dollars 99 cents at a time, it would seem to me that philanthropy may be missing a bet here. I mean, to say to people, could you kick in 99 cents to name it, buy a well, I keep coming back. Yeah, I could do 99 cents. My ringtone costs 29 cents. There's something here that the philanthropic area is missing. I just throw that in because I didn't want to let that on the table. Yeah.
What I would propose is perhaps the flip side of what the previous gentleman said. My name's Dana Goldstein. I'm with Philantech, and we're working to reduce the transaction costs of grants administration so that more funding dollars are going to fund the programs and services that they're intended to fund. One of the things that we see a lot in working with nonprofits and foundations is that the structure of the grant-making process is such that nonprofits are rewarded for success. They're not encouraged to fail. And something that's an essential part of innovating is taking risk. Risk comes with failure. It has to. So the way that traditional philanthropy has worked, if you try something and it fails, you don't get funded again. So if you're trying something and it fails, you don't talk to people about the failure. You sort of try to frame it as the best possible solution. So the challenge that I would toss out, and not a solution, but an approach that I would propose, is something I'd call a Mulligan Fund or a do-over fund. So a pool of money. If you tried something that's innovative and it didn't work, tell us about why it didn't work. Tell us how you would do it the right way. We will fund you to try it again.
So, somebody may know who this... There's a CEO who used to give an annual award every year to a couple of projects that his company launched that didn't work because he thought it showed some initiative. Now, I don't know at what point he limited that. You know, I think New Coke probably would not have gotten an award, but anyway. Yeah.
So to answer a little bit of what Mrs. Strelitz asked about what David Brand really does, and the wonderful thing that Mr. Kaplan did is he brought together, I think, a solution of what we take away, an amazing brain trust of people together in this room today in a way maybe it hasn't happened before. And I think for no money, if we gave David a little bit more to do, if all of us emailed David our need, our great need, something that a project that might be floundering, a project that is near and dear to our hearts, and we put it together in a brain trust and we matched up the people who could help each other. And I'll give you two quick examples. Stephanie, where are you? Okay, Stephanie is with an August institution, Morgan Stanley, and she's taken an interest and is taking something with the FBI. Because I made the comment about prevent child abuse, she came over to me. We're going to put our heads together. I'm going to get the people together to overcome that big roadblock that I said was there for kids who are abused. I listened to Ellen Spear speak about the Heritage Museum. I happen to know the guy who supplies all the plants for Home Depot. She wants to sell her plants. I'm giving her the name of the guy who supplies all the plants for Home Depot so she can sell her plants. So two quick things that happen because I have a big mouth and big ears are things that can happen in this room for no money, just expanding on our influence.
We stay here 6 more hours, we might solve global warming. I saw a couple of hands before we ended. Is that not, again, if you change your mind, it's okay, but if you got something to say, say it.
Hi, Kristen Titus from Jumo. And for those of you who don't know what Jumo is, I, together with one of the co-founders of Facebook, started an online platform to connect everyday people like ourselves with philanthropic causes and organizations. The one thing that I wanted to address the question of how do we create efficiencies? How do we make this environment easier for us to operate in? And after having worked at sort of the intersection of technology and social good as a nonprofit, I think there's a lot of work to be done to create an environment that encourages risk-taking and an investment in and investment in ideas around technological solutions to really big global challenges. Throwing some ideas out there. If you're funding a nonprofit, add money in for a nonprofit to hire an engineer to come in and experiment and come up with 8 ideas to implement. And as you said before, 7 of those 8 may be failures, 1 may be brilliant. But creating an environment in which innovation, in which risk-taking, in which all of this is encouraged is key to finding the next innovative solution.
Okay, I'm going to turn this over to David, and just now, many of you may know of this, but it struck me on both what Deanna was talking about and Lisa, and that is this experiment that was done a few years ago that found that charitable acts of philanthropy produced in the brain an enormous sense of euphoria, that it was comparable to what happens when you got high on a drug or entertained other pleasures. And what's interesting about this is, that there is. I start out by saying Ambrose Bierce was wrong. Well, Immanuel Kant was wrong, because he basically said it can't really be a moral decision if it makes you feel good. He was German, I think, so. And not Jewish. But the point being that the reason why so many people, I think, do want to participate is not in the purest sense of that word selfless. It's that in that Maslow pyramid, it gives you a sense of who you are connected to something bigger than yourself. And it's why we see over and over again that when a videotape hits the screen of a feeding station in Ethiopia, suddenly, just literally millions of people say, wait, I want to help that. And so what I'm underlining here before I turn it over to David is it's not just all the good that can be done, it's that it will increase literally the store of human happiness the more people get involved. So my labors here are done. Thank you for being such a great group. And David, it's your thing.